Let the dragon consume you! Enemy sighted. Stop the payload! Stop the payload! In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we're back. So welcome back to another episode of the Bird Watchers. This is episode 52. I'm your host, Ryan, and we're going to finally do it. I've been promising it for a while, all right? The season has not started again for Overwatch League. That's coming up soon. That'll be next episode. But in between that time, I wanted to take the moment to actually go and talk about Clockwork Vendetta, a team that, has kind of been shaking things up in Contenders and in general has a lot of eyes on them for many different reasons, all of them being good in my eyes. And, they're doing well. They're 5-1 right now. So it turns out it's not a fluke. They made it through open division for a reason. They've kind of kept that momentum. They've grown. And we'll talk about that as they played the Samsung Morning Stars this week. I think this is week 6 of season 2 of Contenders. But before that, so we're starting with a little bit of news. 222 is out. If you've been under a rock, maybe you don't know this. It's currently on PTR. All the rumors are gone. It's official. It's going into effect for stage 4 of the Overwatch League for the pros. And they have the systems on the PTR right now, so you can queue up in quick play and in rank to try those out. There's plenty of news out there. Discussions are already starting. As usual, once 5 minutes pass, people are like, okay, what do you think about 222? And it's like, let's take some time to let the dust settle. But a huge change. Big up to Blizzard for finally doing it. Jeff did mention in the developer update that it was over a year in production. So this isn't something, as someone who's in development, mobile development, game development, whatever it is, development of software and products, it takes time to develop big features. And this is another big shift in their gameplay. But we won't go too deep into that this episode. There's plenty of info out there, especially on the competitive Reddit forums. Check that out. If you haven't joined. If you're not following, follow. But outside of that, on top of it, icing on the cake, we finally got the hero we've been waiting for. Sigma was announced, and wasn't it a hell of an announcement? So it kind of went dead, right? When all the talks of 222 took over, people kind of forgot, oh wait, we're kind of due for a new character. And it turns out that new character ended up being a tank, and a very unique one at that. So Blizzard did their standard developer, reveal of the character. They released this little short, kind of giving you a bit of backstory on Sigma. And this one's just kind of base animated. It's not like, the May shorts and the very in-depth animated ones. It's just kind of your base reveal. And surprisingly enough, it caught wind on YouTube and ended up being trending number 1 for a couple of days, which was surprising because that doesn't usually happen with Overwatch stuff, especially in this day and age. We're going on past, 3 years old. And it was trending, and you had people outside of Overwatch or haven't played in a while looking at this video and like, oh, that's a neat piece of art. So definitely go check it out. It's very entertaining, whether you have context or not. I've actually been doing something where I've had like coworkers and friends that don't play the game outside of it, just kind of watch the video. It's like 2 minutes long at most or less than that. And just the voice acting, the sound production, the way the visuals are handled, the way that the small story is told, the way they represent Sigma's psyche, it's all fun. It's all entertaining. So check that out. So 2 big things that we're not going into this episode because this episode is meant for Clockwork Vendetta. But one more announcement mentioned in the last episode, and it's coming up. It's right around the corner. Stage 4 is starting, which means watch parties are starting. The Atlanta Royal family's back at it again. July 27th is the first start to Stage 4. We'll be at Battle and Brew, the home base, at 7 p.m. You can come through, get comfortable. It's a later game, but it is on a Saturday, so it should be fairly packed. A lot of people are coming out. A lot of people are coming back with the excitement from homestaying because this is the first kind of get together, get to see all the friends they made, all the people they met in person finally, especially if you're local. Come out to that. Come hang out. There's plenty of rooms, there's plenty of food, there's plenty of drinks, plenty of fun. We're going to win. We need to win, start off strong, especially in the 222 now because, in future episodes, I'll talk about how I feel we fit, or maybe at the end of this one, we'll see. But now for why we're here, Clockwork Vendetta. So Clockwork Vendetta shaking up the Europe scene in Contenders. They've been known for essentially breaking the GOATS meta at this level. Instead of playing GOATS, they decided to play something very unorthodox and to essentially focus on beating GOATS, right? But playing characters that most people didn't want to play, most people weren't comfortable playing, but doing so in such an organized manner and putting the effort into practicing it that it's caused a lot of trouble for teams in Open Division, which gave them their debut in Contenders, and they're showing out. They're 5-1 right now. Currently sitting at second. I would want to talk about the match against Team Giganti, who's currently sitting in first place in that bracket, but unfortunately they haven't played them yet. They will play them soon, and I'm looking forward to that match. Whether I'll be able to talk about it, on here, I don't know, because the season's going to start again, and we're back into the thick of things for OWL. But we do have a game against Samsung Morningstars, a team who recently switched to an all French roster, or mostly like 95% French roster. They still have Dragon Eddie on there. He's not currently playing because of the current state of the meta. But yeah, they currently have all French players, and they've fallen a little bit in the bracket. It's like they're trying to re-gel, get this new team going. But they're still trying to play and get that chemistry, and they're just in the path of Clockwork Vendetta as they try to work through all the teams in this bracket, and they're doing a pretty good job. A lot of game fives. That's something I'm noticing, which isn't a bad thing. It means that, they're showing up in game 5. So that means when it goes the distance, they usually come out on top. Usually it shows that they're better at control, which fits their kind of comp. But what is that comp? All right, before we talk about the comp, let's talk about the players. First thing I liked about Clockwork Vendetta when they were announced, and this, Action Esports actually has a great special they did on them specifically. Go back and watch that. It was released not too long ago. It's a great watch. Is there a multicultural team? So we'll just go through the team right here, right? We have your DPS being Ricky and Engineer. Ricky's from the Finland. You have Engineer from Germany. You also have a flex player, Moose, who's also from Germany. You have Minimi, who's their captain, who's representing Austria. You then have Monkmata, who's representing Sweden, and Zytor, who's your other support player representing the Czech Republic. You have Skyripa, who is their latest pickup. Latest pickup in the timeline, who's a flex healer, comes in to support from Romania, and then you have their substitute who's also from Sweden, Purge. So that's a hell of a mix of a team right there. When you talk about representing Europe in that area, you have it down pat. But what are they doing that's kind of shaking the meta? So you've probably seen a little bit of talks about it, but mainly this DPS combo of May and Torb. Action Esports goes into it more in detail if you want to go there, but they're also using Arissa and Hog for that hook, that ball and chain combo, and then they're opting for the Zen Ana healer, which you're not seeing much anymore with GOATs, and with Ana being as squishy as she is against GOATs, people just don't pick her. There are a few teams that do opt to use her a majority of the time, like Charge. They use her as their main healer, so they don't really swap off of Ana. So you get to see her there, but outside of that, not as much these days besides specific picks. But that's what they stick to, that Arissa, Hog, May, Torb, Zen, Ana. That's what they made popular. That's what people are calling Clockwork Comp or Vendetta Comp, but it's their thing, and they do it very well. And the mentality they use is they don't treat it like there's any DPS. It's almost like it's a completely zoning game, and they just take over areas. And one thing they've excelled at and they've improved at is the management of ults. And that's usually where they edge out teams, is in long drawn out bouts of 5 games with the better ult management throughout from beginning to end. They usually come out on top. So what we can do, that's kind of your spiel of like who they are and what they're doing. And the counter effect was happening is teams can't play GOATs into this because they're so good at dismantling GOATs. They built this to dismantle GOATs. They challenged the meta at this level, at the tier 2 level. And in response, it's forcing a lot of teams to practice and come outside that bubble and either play mirror matches or play like double snipe, or you're rarely seeing people play GOATs against them because there's no point in forcing the issue. It's built to beat GOATs, and it's built with players who can play these characters extremely well. People always talk about Engineers, Tor being up there. And Tor players kind of have this tendency to be able to flex outside of that. And we'll talk about some flexing that happens from the support side that, benefits them and it's kind of shown their growth. And we'll talk about that. So let's hop into it. Clockwork Vendetta. So our first map here is Nepal. So we start with our control map, and Morningstar start off well. They look good throughout here with Kagasi, who's one of their DPS players, causing a lot of trouble for Clockwork on Hanzo. He has some great picks, and he also has great ult usage, and this leads to the round being won for Morningstars. And this then takes us to, from Shrine, so they win Shrine, takes us to Sanctuary on Nepal here. And Clockwork attempts to mirror the double sniper comp for Morningstars, and they don't really have the same kind of appeal there. Kagasi continues to have these great picks and these impressive, well-placed Hanzo Dragons. I don't usually say that, and even at this level, I've watched a lot of Overwatch League, right? We've all watched a lot of Overwatch League. And even when you're in your games, the thing about Hanzo right now is, it used to be that his dragon used to get a lot of kills and stuff like that. But it's usually been used as a zone mechanic. Early London Spitfire used him a lot to zone with that dragon. But I have to say Kagasi, and this is me coming new to him. I've never really seen him play outside of this game. This man has probably some of the best dragon placements I've ever seen. Not to tap myself on the back, but as a viewer, I'm like, okay, I can see the whole field. I see the whole picture where he doesn't. And every time I'm like, oh, well, he put it exactly where it needed to be either valuable or to get the kills it needed or to create the space it needed for the objective to move and such. So yeah, Morningstars start the series 1-0 here, mainly on the back of him. And then we take this momentum kind of into Anubis. We start off with Clockwork on attack here. Clockwork starts with Monkmata on Sombra and Engineer on Hanzo and struggle a bit on point 1. So once again, they're still outside of their standard comp they're known for. And it kind of shows here. They struggle a bit on point 1, and that's mainly because Kagasi is still popping off on on Hanzo, doing a great job. But once they're able to cap that first point, they essentially get to snowball point 2, finishing with about 4 minutes. So they recover a bit here from the Clockwork Vendetta side. This takes us to Morningstars on attack. And at this point is when I become a complete Kagasi fanboy, right? This man is so fun to watch on Hanzo. I actually went and played Hanzo afterwards. Obviously, that wasn't the same effect, but that's how Overwatch keeps tricking us into getting back on, right? Is to watch these pros pop off and then think we can do it ourselves. Yeah, he's fun to watch. Morningstar's roll point 1 and point 2. He gets a perfectly timed kill on Ricky's May here to cancel the Blizzard activation, which pretty much caps that point for them, and they end up capping with more time. 5 minutes remaining here for them. So this takes us in a pretty chunky round 2. Both teams having plenty of time to make attempts here. So in round 2, Clockwork attacks, but they burn a chunk of their time losing this double sniper mirror with Asking and Kagasi just outperforming their snipers. They cap point 1 on the final attempt, but don't have much time to get anything done on point 2. Morningstars then go next and absolutely pummel Clockwork almost the same way they did in the first round to take this map and go up 2-0, and Asking and Kagasi just look prime form right now. To have both of them playing, Asking known for his Widowmaker, or known for being a Widowmaker, he's kind of on and off. He gets hot and cold, which we'll see in a bit, but Kagasi is definitely the standout here for me. That's kind of creating that momentum to keep Samsung Morningstars moving forward. So 2-0, they're already up 2-0. So then we go to King's Row, and we get Scarippa coming in, like I said, the new guy, right? New by a couple months. New guy coming in for Zytor, and this is them kind of swapping to this single healer a lot, where they have Scarippa just on the Mercy single healing. But we start with Clockwork on attack here, and they go back to their roots a bit. Clockwork goes back to using that Torb May comp, and Morningstars can't stop this cart from moving from the moment it starts. Clockwork ends up finishing with 4:22 left, and if you know anything about King's Row, we've talked about it a lot. That's a lot of time for King's Row. So then Morningstars answer here on attack, and they never really get any momentum because Monkmata is keeping them in check on his Widow. So Monkmata is their Ana player, but he has a Widow that he's been practicing for a while, which kind of gives them some flexibility to shift into some things. So that's two things you'll see is them shift into a Widow or Hanzo and mix the comp up a bit from their base comp. Here we have him on Widow, and he's just popping off, and he's actually keeping Asking in check, who is a Widow player predominantly. Kagasi does have huge dragons. He's still performing, but the rest of the team is not really following up here. So that finally gets them through point 2 choke, but there's not enough time to follow up, and they end up getting held. So Clockwork finally gets on the board here, making it 2-1 in the series. This then takes us to Dorado, and we have Morningstar starting on attack. And Morningstar's attempt to put Tech 36 on a Farah, but asking is losing 90% of the Widow battles with Magmata. So in Dorado, you have these great sightlines for a majority of the map besides the final point for Widow, right? And in that Widow battle, if you have a Widow Farah, the goal of the Widow is to keep the other Widow down so Farah can do her damage, essentially win that war of attrition. But if your Widow's losing, then he's just taking out the Widow and then taking out the Farah unabated. And that's not good. And that's essentially what Magmata keeps up through the duration of this. That Farah pick end up not helping them at all. And it leads them to getting held right after point 1. So that's not very far on Dorado. We start on Clockwork on attack now, and I started calling him Monk Master because he continues to open up these fights with solid picks, and Clockwork doesn't have much trouble covering the short distance and tying this series up 2-2. So now we have our final map. Like I said, map 5s usually work in Clockwork's favor. They're good on control because of that comp. And it takes us to Busan. So we start with Sanctuary here. And this is a fun round to watch because Clockwork get to 99-0. And then Slur does this thing. So Slur is the flex healer, flex support for Samsung Morningstars. And he starts flanking around on Zenyatta just with nobody else, just by himself. And he opens up a strategy for Clockwork that Clockwork can't deal with because of their characters having to be near point or to be together to work. Him flanking around means they can't separate to contest him because then they can't contest point. It kind of pulls them away from things, and it gives them an open sight line to just rain down, orbs from behind, build fast ults. And what happens is, because he's doing that damage from that position, even if they want to engage him, all he has to do is trance to get past them to point. So he can still protect his teammates when they need it. It's a great option here, and it's a quick thinking thing, and it works for the duration. And Morningstars end up turning this one around. They steal this round, Sanctuary from Clockwork Vendetta. They should have had this one. But it almost looks like they panicked. Then it takes us to downtown, and Clockwork stays strong again. Once again, you get the 99, but they actually finish this time going 100-0. Then we go into Mecha Base, where Clockwork Vendetta is good at managing their ults better. And who knew Monk Master was a god-like Widow? He played Widow for a lot of this match. He did play more Widow than he played support, and he was performing well from beginning to end. Asking did perform well at the beginning of the match or the series, but towards the end he petered out and couldn't compete. And once he started losing those Widow battles to Magmata, it was like there was nothing he can do to come back. And then in turn, Kagasi also fell behind on the damage as well. But yeah, Clockwork take this round 100-0 again to prove their point. They're good at control, and they reverse sweep Morningstars, who started this series out 2-0, but Clockwork ends up winning it 3-2. So yeah, as I said, this was exciting to watch. It's great to watch them grow, because when they started, people were like, okay, well, you have this comp. People see it coming from a mile away. They're just going to prepare for it, or they're going to counter it. And then once that's done, you're done. You lose. And that's not the case, because like I said, these guys, the comp they're playing are such, unorthodox characters to be mixing to accomplish a goal, that there's a high chance they're good at playing other things. And then they've started mixing it in, and they started, working on their version or their double snipe comp, or working in that third DPS with having a single healer and putting Magmata on the Widow, because with Magmata on the Widow, you don't really need the healer because you have a Hog on the team. So you have a Hog, you have a Mei who can take care of herself and the Hog, and then you have the Mercy doing the single healing. It kind of works out still. Torb can kind of take care of himself too with his engineering ability, where he can pump up and run away and get packs and stuff, essentially play it like a tracer kind of thing. And then his turret can distract. So that also counts as sort of like pseudo health. There's a lot there that they work with, and they're so well at communicating positioning and their ult usage that it comes together and gels really well. And now they're more flexible. And like I said, you have an Ana main or a support that can play Widow like this. Yes, Samsung Morningstars are currently at the bottom of the bracket because they haven't been performing well, but it shows that Clockwork Vendetta might be here to stay. And I'm interested to see what the Overwatch League, because a lot of people have said this strategy won't work at that level, which I can imagine, right? But it's one of those cases where I'm interested to see how coaches approach this team and what they're doing, and kind of how they look at individual players as talent pieces, because this is a very unique mixed team. And I'm all about representation and having as many nationalities represented in the league as if they deserve it. If the people deserve to be there, but it's great to have that representation. So I wonder if, like, how these coaches are evaluating these players inside this comp, because it's definitely outside the norm. But yeah, that's it. That's Clockwork Vendetta. That's the look we're gonna take. I'm happy I finally got to talk about him a bit. And once again, definitely check out that Action Esports video, because that's kind of what didn't spark my interest. I've kind of been reading about them, but it extended it to where I was like, okay, I want to watch a game and kind of talk about it and see through my process what I'm seeing from these guys. And they look legit to me. They can play, they can hang out in Contenders, and they're taking Europe. I mean, they beat Angry Titans, they beat everybody. They still got to play Team Giganti soon. I'm interested to see what happens there. That's going to be a big one. I think it's going to get a lot of views. And they've got people hype about, they kept people hype about Overwatch during this 3-3 kind of staleness that's going away, because we're getting 2-2-2. And that kind of takes us into what we're going to talk about next episode. So stage 4 is going to be the next episode 53. And we'll get into it. We'll talk about 2-2-2, how it's affecting the teams. We'll look at 2 matches as we usually do. And it's going to be crazy, man. It's going to be crazy not talking about GOATs. I mean, this is episode 51, and we've been talking about it, or sorry, episode 52. Next episode's going to be 53. Sorry, getting everybody confused. But it's one of those things where, I've been talking about GOATs for, it feels like almost a year now. And shows, go over that old, but like that's the meta we've had. And it's going to be exciting to see what changes, what I can kind of figure out, because I'm not going to have any expertise really, since it's been so long, but we'll figure it out and see what's happening. And it's exciting again. You have people coming back. Like I heard, just random gossip, well, not gossip, like Tim the Tatman's back, streaming. You have people like Myth coming in and playing the game. You have Shroud taking a gander. He came in and played with a few friends. Like that stuff, that's big. That's big when streamers are like, oh, okay, I'm either getting back in or I'm trying it, because I've heard so much about it. You see, the Overwatch League's been doing great. It hasn't been doing gangbusters because of the 3-3-3 situation, or the 3-3, not 3-3-3. That's 9 people. Since that situation, it kind of pushed people away and kept people outside of it. But now it's, it's exciting to play again, them implementing it on the level of us, where we get the ladder do this, creating, like, definitely go look into it if you haven't read up on it, or ask your friend. Your friends are probably talking about it if they play Overwatch. But as usual, you can reach us at thebirdwatcherspodcast@gmail.com. I'm always checking that. On Twitter, I'm most active at podcast TBW. That's podcast TBW. And then on Reddit, the Birdwatchers Podcast. If you're not on the competitive Reddit, I always say competitive Reddit, the competitive Overwatch Reddit, join, subscribe, follow, whatever it is. There's plenty of stuff up there, especially with these changes. It's super active. It's always been active, but now it's just overactive. If you ask me, it's kind of hard to keep up with all the posts. Great content from other podcasters there, so check that out. And then if you're listening to this but you have like YouTube Premium, you'd rather start using that, we also post our video / podcast there as well, so you can listen to it there. So as usual, thanks for listening. This has been episode 52, and I'll be coming back with you next week for the beginning of stage 4. So until then, see ya, and thanks as always.